All right. Welcome to Veg Networking, a community where plant-based vegan entrepreneurs connect and collaborate. Our special guest today is the best goalie in his hockey league. He is a domestic warrior. I'm sure we'll hear more about that. He's a Kickstarter success story, an intrapreneur turned entrepreneur. Today, we welcome the founder of Elemeno, delivering healthy, hassle-free, plant-based kids lunches direct to Vancouver parents. Nutritious, delicious, simplicious. Help us welcome Ryan McKee. Welcome.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Welcome. And we're looking forward to learning more about what you're up to in terms of your business. And so we'll jump right in. And the first question, I think for you, is going to be a mix of two. The first question is, what is your plant-based vegan origin story? And then the second question is, what is your transition from intrapreneur to entrepreneur? And I think that those are married together. So tell us more.
Sure. I mean, the origin story, I'll start there, but it certainly ties into the business, which will make a good transition. But so I've been plant-based since October, so I guess we're about 6 months now. And I mean, certainly, I think a lot of the reasons many people would have made that transition. So certainly health. Everyone on my side of the family that's older than me is on cholesterol medication and has been since they were 30, 40, stuff like that. And so I realized that certainly their diets played a factor, and so that was obviously a big piece. Obviously the planet, and number of documentaries and kind of articles and books and things like that I'd come across over the years. I sort of felt in my head that I would always make this switch at some point. I just kept delaying it, and then sort of became very real in the fall. And I think the third one for me, which really ties into Elemeno and making food for kids, and really realizing that the diversity in diets in our elementary schools is growing compared to, say, maybe when I was a kid. And with that has come also, there's been an increase in food sensitivities. And one of the things I've realized is that children with a food sensitivity are often relegated to one, the last item on a menu, right? If you go to a restaurant or something, or maybe one or two things. Or I'd almost say worse, they have to get kind of a watered down version of something. So, they've just basically, it's the same food, but they've stripped away, all the cheese or, whatever it might be. And there hasn't been a lot of thought put into it to kind of reintroduce or put in other ingredients to compensate for that, the loss of texture, the loss of saltiness, or, flavor, all of those types of things. And of course, nutrients. So, that really dawned on me that if I'm going to make a kids meal program, that actually there's a real gap in providing foods that are inclusive from the start. So they're not, it's not about making a million customizations, but rather I started asking myself, well, why do we need dairy at all? Why should, what if we just don't use meat? What if we don't use these, gluten and things like that? Can we still make food that is just delicious and really appeals to everyone, so that everybody can look at a menu and feel like at least, say, 90% of it is accessible to them? And going through that thought process, I'll come back to my plant-based journey. I realized that I don't have any food sensitivities, and I've been privileged or lucky, I suppose, that I just kind of eat whatever is in front of me, and have been for my whole life. And it was that piece that really kicked me into going plant-based, that I wanted to feel what it was like to place restrictions on myself. What was it like to go shopping? What was it like to go to a restaurant? What was it like to make food and when other members of your family aren't plant-based? Would you be hungry all the time? Would you feel would you be lacking in certain nutrients? Would your bank account be suffering? Just how would this play out? I really want to understand ultimately my customers better, my kids and parents that do deal with restricted food intake in all forms. And that really kicked me in. Once it became a part of something that also made sense to my business, I was like, okay, let's do this for me personally. And then I just fell for it. I got a month in and I was like, this isn't so bad. And then I got 2 months in and I was like, I actually really enjoy this. I'm opening my eyes to so many new foods and so many other flavors that I'd probably only had occasionally in the past.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, you got us all excited about how awesome and delicious the food is. So I've never heard of the word simplicious. Did you guys come up with that?
So my background is in brand and marketing, and I've done a lot of slogans and logos slogos in my day, and so a lot of that stuff I have a lot of fun with. Even the names of some of my meals and things like that were things that I went put my marketing hat back on and got to play with. And yeah, I just sort of landed on that one really early, and realized that although it's of course not a real word, it's a play on the word. Parents need that simplicity in their life so much. And I mean, we've seen it especially through this pandemic, that everybody's under one roof and everyone's trying to work and learn and play and eat and sleep and all this. And creating a service that provides some level of simplicity, some level of convenience for them is highly sought after right now.
And speaking of a play on words, when I first came across your brand, it literally in my head, I said the letters out loud, LMNOP, and I think that's what Elemeno is, right?
Yeah, that's it. I was driving with my kids and we were singing the alphabet song, and um, I just, sometimes you daydream as you're driving around, and I was like, it's interesting how A, B, C, D each has its own note, and then LMNO gets like half notes, like it gets squished together, almost truncated, like as if it's its own word. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's a word, and then I just went and sort of built off of that. So.
All right, everybody. Well, you heard it here, the master of creating words. So what are some trends in your industry? You're in a really unique industry, food service specifically for kids, which isn't a trend maybe in and of itself, but on the trend note, what are you noticing?
Yeah, so the first real kind of major trend that pushed me into this concept was just home, like food delivery, and home delivery in terms of groceries, in terms of meal kits, and of course just restaurant cuisine. And that there's a pretty good study out that suggests it's about anywhere between a 2.2 and a 2.6 billion dollar industry right now in Canada, with 7.7% compound annual growth. And that of course has been heightened by the pandemic, but a lot of once that habit has been put in place, it's believed that families will continue to adopt those types of behaviors where they get help with meals. And what I saw as a bit of a gap was that there wasn't really a lot out there taking care of the kids' lunch space, even though that's a very small item on the list. It is a daily chore, and every parent I talked to said, yeah, I wake up in the morning and I've got to throw something together, or after at night when the kids are in bed and I've done the dishes, I still got one more job to do. I've got to make the lunch. And often you're limited to just what's in the fridge as opposed to what you would love to make. And so I thought this is interesting. With a simple few taps of a phone, they can access dinner, they can access groceries, they can access a meal kit, and things like that. But they can't just get like tomorrow's lunch solved. And certainly as an early product, I'm not quite so real time, and that's a parent could like tap it on their phone and then the next day they get a lunch. But like that's a model that I may evolve into where it's actually that simplicious for them. So.
Yeah, totally. Did you say 2.6 billion and 7.7 year over year?
Yeah, for the next 4 years. Statista.com has done that study. So yeah,
Nice.
it's absolutely growing. So I think that there's a ton of opportunity, and then you merge that with just the growth in plant-based food, and whether it's food on the production side and demand. And what I've seen, just even as my own on my own journey, is that while veganism is certainly on the rise, people adopting plant-based lifestyles is far surpassing. So that there's or at least plant-based behaviors throughout a week. So there's a study. I should have had my notes handy to reference it properly, but upwards of 32% of Canadians this year expect to adjust their food intake and use sort of meat-free and dairy-free foods in their weekly diet. So that doesn't necessarily mean a complete shift to a vegan lifestyle, but what it means is things like meatless Mondays, or I mean, I saw a tweet or an article or something that Vice President Kamala Harris is vegan before 6 p.m. And I thought that was really kind of a cool way to look at it. Like, sure, at dinner time, have, meat and cheese or whatever you'd like, but, her and what she thinks is right for her is this sort of plant-based lifestyle for breakfast and lunch and all that. And I thought that's interesting. Like, it's neat that people are taking unique definitions and applying it so that they can be a part of this movement.
Yeah, we can all agree eating more plants is definitely beneficial for sure. So that's amazing. Yeah. So in terms of future growth for Elemeno, you had a successful Kickstarter. Where is your brand going in the next 12, 24 months?
Right. Great question. So, I keep calling it's a minnow right now. I mean, it really is. It launched about 3 weeks ago. It's got a handful of customers. Certainly some from the Kickstarter, they sort of pre-bought into it and things like that as well. So I also have those as some customers. But between now and June, so we're in March, so 3 months. Really, it's putting the products out in market and validating it further, and almost like a prototype. So getting, if I get 50 customers or 60 or something like that, that would be wonderful. And really just understanding what parents like and what their kids like, and if I'm hitting the mark. And then for September, looking at quite a major rollout across multiple cities around Vancouver, as this kind of subscription-based lunch service, as kind of a once-a-week delivery, and then establishing that kind of base of customers, then moving into grocery stores and cafes and potentially farmers markets and things like that. Really just turning, my goal is to turn Elemeno into a national kids plant-based food brand. And delivered lunches is step one of that, and a way to bring to get really close with customers, not on a store shelf where maybe I'm getting feedback through a third party and things like that, where I'm truly hearing directly from parents. So it's a very kind of methodical approach, and it's slow, to be honest, but I believe it's like the right way to, like I said, really truly understand my customer for the next several months before I think I could go into a bigger environment.
You're spot on. Not listening to your customer and expanding too quickly are the two curses that'll crush any minnow, as you say, that'll grow into a beast. So that in a good way. That's great. Our next question is, do you support any charitable organizations? And through a little bit of reading, I was able to find out that you're doing something really cool, if you still are, with Mom to Mom, single moms.
Definitely. And so this one I come by it honestly. I was raised by a single mom, and it ties nicely because I remember the challenge of making lunches and throwing stuff together, with not much in the fridge. And I had some really productive conversations with them in the summer, and a portion of the lunches that I make in this early going, I'm delivering lunches basically over to them to give to some of their folks in their network. So super happy with that. In terms of longer term, I'm not going too, let's call it, heavy or hard in that area, because I do feel fundamentally I have to get my sort of business model right and revenue model, and just really know exactly you know, what's my margin, and just all of those things that, you know, you really can only spitball at the start, and then you have to actually see the numbers come in and start to go, oh, okay, here's where, you know, here's the profit, and here's, you know, where I can invest in other areas and all that. So it's kind of I'd say it's a casual relationship with them. It's not like a full-on partnership. And they've also been very careful, because they're like, we have startups approach us all the time, and then they come and go. But we had, like I said, we had a really wonderful conversation. We're doing a couple very simple things to start, and then yeah, I would love it if, because let's face it, my product is a bit premium. It's higher price than you know, what might be in a school cafeteria or something like that. And so it would be wonderful if a portion of that could help to serve you know, a greater population out there.
Totally. And it all starts somewhere, right? I mean, you said earlier on that you're 3 weeks old, so there's already a lot of great stuff going on. So a lot of great relationships, a lot of really solid foundations by the sounds of things so far. So that's wonderful, wonderful to hear. Okay, so as an entrepreneur, what is a book, a podcast, or an app that you would like to share that helps when it comes to business and entrepreneurship?
Hmm. I mean, certainly, I don't even know if it's so. There is a book, but really kind of a methodology, like just the lean startup kind of philosophy was something. I just finished my executive MBA at SFU last year. I graduated last spring, and you know, one of the courses really leans on that, and outlines that sort of reverse approach of, you know, don't go and buy a building and buy a whole bunch of inventory, and then, you know, put an open sign in your window and wonder why nobody's showing up, but rather, you know, go and get the customers first, go validate the idea, you know, then prototype a product, and learn from their feedback, and grow in that regard. And I've really taken that to heart. I mean, last spring I interviewed 200 parents. Again, the Kickstarter helped to validate things. I've been testing my meals since December with about 20-25 parents. And frankly, these first 3 weeks are like tests as well. I'm just basically asking them, you know, what they liked and don't like, and all of that. And so that kind of lean methodology, or that way of starting a business where, you know, you're not taking on a significant amount of investment up front, you're not taking on risk, and it's more than just financial risk that that methodology is speaking to. It's also an admission that you don't know all the things you don't know, and there's a massive learning curve coming your way. And so to lock into any one concept, or, you know, I've already pivoted. I literally pivoted last week, like a very major pivot, like something that I thought would have taken months for me to do. And I saw the issue within like 2 deliveries, 2 weeks. And I was like, no, we've got to make a change right now. And it definitely like had me scrambling. I mean, I'll share it just quickly. But basically, my model, again, in this lean approach, was to work with a caterer, so that I'm not absorbing the costs of, you know, hiring a kitchen and staff, and, you know, food inventory and all this. And this caterer has been amazing, like absolutely wonderful and helpful, and totally got me to this point. But they've also been very open about, well, we have other orders and we have other things, and you kind of have to just deliver the recipe as perfect as you want it and or need it, and then we're just going to churn it out. And what I realized is that early on, that's putting me at arm's length from the thing I'm actually selling, the actual product. I'm not there like taste testing it, or I'm not seeing it get put together, or seeing where the log jams are in the kitchen or whatever. And I realized that at this moment, I don't need the efficiency and the like, you know, whatever you know, the way that a catering company can churn things out really quickly. I actually need to be like personally like in it, and really understanding what's happening, and also the flavors and things like that, because I am still like learning things about what the kids think about it. So I literally went and got commissary space, you know, met, like I have the inspection is on Sunday, like literally made an entire switch into that, because I recognized how much how much it felt kind of like handcuffs or something in those first 2 weeks to just simply give an order to a caterer and then like pick it up on Tuesday morning. Like it was like, no, I've got to be so much more involved. So yeah, that was super, it was like a little milestone moment, I think.
No, congrats. That's amazing. Having the humility to make the pivot, right? It's one thing to think about the pivot and a whole other thing to actually have the faith to follow through with it. So that's great. Yeah. Do you have any apps or podcasts that maybe we don't know about?
Just look. Do you know what? It's funny. I use podcasts to basically like turn my brain off. So it's all like comedy and stuff. But
Yeah, totally.
so like Smartless, which is with Jason Bateman and Will Arnett and Sean Hayes and Conan O'Brien and Needs a Friend and things like that. But let me find the last one. Yeah, Masters of Scale with Reid Hoffman is really great. Reid's from LinkedIn, one of the founders of LinkedIn, or the founder of LinkedIn, I guess, and just interviews entrepreneurs. And it's he's got kind of a cool like flow to it. Like it kind of moves quick, and he kind of structures it in a way that it almost feels like a bit of like a novel. Like every episode is like, there's kind of like an arc, like there's a like, oh no, what's going to happen? And then like they go to commercial basically, and then they come back and they hear from the founder or the entrepreneur of how they solve this issue. So it's kind of fun. It's a really nice listen.
Very cool. Masters of Scale, Lee Hoffman.
Yeah.
Now, naturally, with people who are sort of more plant-based, vegan individuals, we love to support any company that's similar to us. But with that being said, maybe like with your marketing background, are there any companies that you love to follow that are really like inspiring? I wouldn't say look up to, but I guess like any companies you look up to for marketing or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. So my whole background was in the sports industry. So I started at the Vancouver Canucks. I went to the Vancouver Whitecaps, and I went down to Australia and worked in Australian football for 5 years. And then I came home and I worked for Mount Equipment Co-op for 4 years or so as well. So, and those brands, I mean, the one thing that I love and can reminisce on in terms of working in the sports and outdoor industry is just that feeling of love and devotion that people have for those brands. I mean, Mech's gone through some really difficult struggles this last year, and so that's probably shifting. But certainly, like from over the course of its 48-year history, certainly sports teams, people live and die by them, by every win and loss, and I feel like by going through a career in that space, I learned about passion and love. I feel like I have like a PhD in fan loyalty or something. People don't love photocopiers or whatever. Maybe some people do. I shouldn't say that. But people love their local sports team, or they love their hobby or their physical activity outdoors or whatever. And I know that there's a ton of certainly teams and brands and stuff like that in those spaces that I've looked up to throughout my career, and really appreciate how or have felt, or at least attempted to try and pull those learnings into like an entirely new industry for me, which is the food industry, and try and at every juncture create lovable products, lovable names, things that become an indelible part of a family's conversation. So, while recipes, for example, can be borrowed and copied, and you can Google them and all these things, they're not really ownable in any way. The name you put behind it is ownable. The kind of branding, the look and the feel, the way you present it in a package is ultimately equitable, and is a way that you can build that brand value. And that's the type of thing that I learned very much in the sports industry, and have tried to apply here.
Very, very, very great. Amazing. So we're already at the 8 of 8 question here, and it's always prefaced by, we know you're humble, You've been great. You've dropped a lot of knowledge already and little tidbits here and there. But with all that being said, is there any advice that you want to leave those of us who are listening and will be listening afterwards?
Yeah, and I think where um, the angle that, or the learning that I've had, so I would say I'm like mid-career. I had about a 17 or 18-year career in the sports industry, um, and for entrepreneurs that make that kind of mid-career pivot, I think one of the hardest things, there's a lot of literature around fear of failure and getting over that and things like that. And it is absolutely valid and everything. But to me, at least, and maybe to others, the bigger hurdle is, or has been, the fear of of looking dumb, frankly. And this notion that, like I said, 17, 18 years in the sports industry, if you'd worked in a certain industry, you'd probably feel like you kind of know it all, or at least know most things. Like, you're not making mistakes every day. You're making maybe a mistake a month or every couple of weeks. Like, you're kind of, you're sort of in your role, and you know exactly what you're doing. Um, and then to move into entrepreneurship, and especially a new industry like I've done, where you truly are like making mistakes almost daily at times, weekly certainly, and you also have to show up and ask really dumb questions and feel really dumb. I've had calls with people in the industry. Some have been absolutely wonderful and gracious, and given me time, and I'm so thankful. And I've had other calls where it felt really, really uncomfortable. I felt really dumb. I kind of got lectured a bit, or I got sort of told how, I'm not, this isn't going to work, or, you don't know what you're doing, or whatever. And um, there's a huge amount of like swallowing your pride and being able and willing to look a bit foolish. And I think that if you're 19, starting something, you can probably accept that space. I don't know. It was a long time ago for me. But if you're, if you're 40 or whatever, and you've gone from positions where you sort of kind of know what you're doing to now not knowing what you're doing, it can be a massive hit to the ego. And the sooner you can get over that and get over yourself and recognize that it's only momentary, you're only going to feel dumb for the first, I don't know, year, maybe 18 months, whatever, maybe less, maybe 6 months, uh, and then just get on with that and accept it, the better you'll be.
Thank you so much for sharing. Before we sort of outro you here by talking about where people can find you on social media, is there anything that maybe we missed, or anything that you want to double back on or mention just before we let you go?
No, not really. I mean, I feel like it's so early days for me. So like, you could talk to me in a month or two, and I feel like I'd have a whole, batch of new learnings as well. So it's been great to just even emote a little and just to share all this. It's like self-therapeutic. So thank you for the time doing this.
I did want to ask one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I found you on LinkedIn. Apparently I'm following you, and
Yes.
it was the JPEG that you put up that talked about the power balance and how it completely flipped during COVID for you and your family and your wife. And I would really like to have you expand upon that checklist that you created, because it was really eye-catching and it was inspiring to me. That was the reason why I looked at it, and I just said, here's a man that went from this to this, and look at how humble he's being. And that's why we reached out. So I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that dynamic and what it was like, with the family and with COVID, and just sort of how, like the pre-days before Elemeno, just sort of what was happening.
Yeah, totally. And so, in all transparency, so I was let go from MEC last, like basically about a year ago, right around now. And um, I knew I was kind of wanting to jump into an entrepreneurial venture anyway. So I wasn't too upset about that. I was kind of like, okay, this is the sign for me to get going. And then of course the pandemic and all this stuff. And in the last years, quite a significant change in my lifestyle and the dynamic around our family has occurred. And the JPEG Helen's referring to, it sort of has a plus and a minus column, and on the minus it's like I lost my job, and then on the plus it's like all these other things I gained, and some of them are silly, like I grew my hair out for the first time, and I made my first batch of beer, and we bought a tent trailer and things like that. And then other things are very significant in terms of what's happening in these four walls, which is I've got to be more of the primary caretaker and in the house, which means I've developed a massive bond with my two daughters. I get to take my older daughter, my 6-year-old, to school every morning, and our 2-year-old, I get to build a relationship that oftentimes the working parent, the one that's like off to the office or whatever, doesn't get to do during those toddler years, and the one that sort of chooses to stay at home really builds that bond. So in that regard, while there was definitely times that I'm like, there was definitely in the first month or two where I felt like if I wasn't putting in 8 hours of work in a day, I felt like it was a failure of a day. And it took me a while to realize that, 2 hours is okay. As long as you tick some things off your checklist. And meanwhile, in those other 6 hours, you're doing some pretty amazing things with your daughter, and you're having a lot of fun doing it, and you're not going to get this time back. There will be other times to, step on the gas pedal with your business. There will not be other times that Neva is 2 years old. And so it was things like that. And I truly have moments throughout the week where I'm just, we're at a playground and hanging out, and I'm just like, this has to be what the meaning of life is. Like, it can't just be going out and making money and whatever, and missing all of this opportunity. And then the other really important piece to this is my wife, and a very successful, very accomplished, educated individual, and who, like, frankly, most or many moms have to put their career on hold for a period of time when they have children, and then have to kind of reconcile that of like, well, where am I at in my career? And I was growing, and now I'm flatlining or whatever, and this feeling of like finding that balance in her family life and her career. And then due to the circumstances, she's now taken on many more clients. She's doing really well, and basically the breadwinner of the house. And it's a fantastic opportunity to flip the sort of old-fashioned or traditional dynamic, if you will, and really reinvigorate her career, and get that really going. She's doing fantastic, and showing our two daughters that this is life's a fluid thing, and when you have a partner, you and your partner should look at your careers and your family time and stuff in that sort of fluid way, as opposed to maybe traditional roles. So that's been a big realization for me, and realize that maybe I don't have to race back to get to work. Maybe I don't have to clock 40 hours on Elemeno for it to be successful. I'll chip away at this 10-12 hours, and I'll enjoy this really unique moment in time that I have.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Thank you for that question, Helen. And I think that's very full circle, Ryan. I think that brings it all back to the domestic warrior that you've been titled, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's that's what my wife calls me. I think I'm pretty average at that, but I do try and I have learned to cook a lot more, and I'm probably better at cleaning than I used to be, for sure.
Oh, can't we all be better at cleaning, for sure? No, your wife sounds amazing. Your family sounds great. Your business sounds great. We're looking forward to following you along the journey. And there's going to be a lot of people, I'm sure, here who are part of this group that are on the call with us today, or you'll see their emails, and maybe next week or the week after, if you're sticking around, you'll see these people, and they can help depart some wisdom on commissary kitchens, manufacturing, all the other sides of the business, or whatever else you need. I hope that we can all be a resource for you. So if you want to find out more about Ryan and Elemeno, you can check them out on the web www.elemeno.co. So that's ELEMENO.co, and on Instagram at Elemeno_co. Thank you very much, Ryan McKee.
Thanks for having me. Super fun to chat. So really appreciate it.